Hi again! Welcome to our second video about the meaning of organic. One of the most frequently asked questions we get in the store is whether our products are organic. The answer to that question is not super straightforward, and that's because the term organic in its various cultural, scientific, and legal senses is actually kind of touchy. Also, the cultural fixation on this word goes back further than you might think. The word organic comes from the word organ, which first shows up in the English language in the 13th century to describe the musical instrument that we see in old churches. From here we get the adjective organic, which shows up in the 16th century, but at this point it means something mechanical, which is pretty much the opposite of its current definition. By the 19th century, natural science and philosophy started using the word organic to identify carbon-based life forms, which is basically anything living on this planet. This is where things start to get weird. The Industrial Revolution, which also began in the 19th century, created a huge sense of cultural anxiety as societies were radically restructured with the influx of new mechanical technology. English writers and cultural critics appropriated the term organic from the natural sciences to describe the idealized, natural way of life they believed industrialism to be destroying. The organic society described in this literature is really just a nostalgic imagining of old rural life conjured by very rich urban writers living in a time of social disruption. Skip ahead to the 1940s, Organic Gardening and Farming magazine has a relatively small circulation in the United States among farmers and home gardeners interested in growing methods which don't involve chemical fertilizers and pesticides. The concept of organic food doesn't become hugely popular as a consumer category until we get to the hippies in the 1960s, and even here it's not for the reasons you might assume. During the Vietnam War, the companies who manufactured pesticides used in domestic food production were the same companies who were manufacturing the Agent Orange being dumped on people of Vietnam. Eating organic was part of the anti-war movement because it was seen as a way of opting out of the military-industrial complex. The reason I go through this is to highlight how the word organic has a long and complex history as both a scientific and a cultural category, and the two can be conflated to serve special interests, which is pretty much exactly what happened when organic standards were legally put in place in the 1990s. Organic agriculture began as a movement among farmers and consumers as a resistance to certain forms of industrial change and later to a specific political conflict. It began as more of a philosophy than a science, as a principle of growing food according to the logic of nature rather than the logic of industry. But, like many artifacts of the political resistance in the 1960s, organic agriculture developed a consumer cachet upon which businesses were only too happy to cash in. This is why governments eventually stepped in to create a set of standards to prevent just anyone from adopting the label organic. Although imposing standards was ostensibly meant to protect the integrity of the organic name, it created some serious problems for the organic movement. Firstly, many of the early advocates of organic believed the standards were not strict enough, which certainly played in the favor of large agricultural industry wanting to cash in on the organic trend without having to scale down or change their practices all that much. Secondly, the bureaucratization of organic meant that some smaller farmers whose principles were more in line with the original movement couldn't afford the certification, while large industries who managed to check all the right boxes could. Third, the scientific sense of organic won out over the philosophical because philosophy can't be legislated, so certified organic became a science of meeting certain criteria rather than a commitment to striving for a relationship with nature. Just to be clear, we're not saying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and forget about organic altogether. The organic label can sometimes be very useful in discerning products. What we want to do is make the point that having an organic certification is not all there is to the story. Here's what we recommend. If you already buy organic, take a moment to take a step back and ask yourself what exactly is it about organic food that is important to you. Then look at the organic food you buy and ask if your values are reflected in those items. They may be well reflected in products that are not actually certified organic, and some certified organic products may not reflect those values at all. We're going to be making videos coming up where we visit our producers so that you can learn more about how the food in our store is produced, so stay tuned for that. We'll be sure to talk to some of our producers about their experience going through the organic certification process. Once again, we've listed the sources used to make this video for further reading if you're interested, and we've also provided links to government web pages with info about organic standards and regulations in Canada. If you have suggestions for future topics you would like to see covered in this series, let us know in the comments, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye!